Muhammad Ali Jinnah is a very controversial person in India, and also both in India and Pakistan there is not much clarity on what he actually thought about why he wanted Pakistan and what kind of Pakistan he visualized, and to what extent he is responsible for partition. So these are highly debated, contested issues. So we will first be clear on certain things in which there is not of controversy. For example, he at one time wanted a secular, united and democratic India. Okay. He was called Ambassador of Hindu-Muslim Unity, called by Gokhale, Tilak, Sarojini Naidu. And what Aga Khan said, was president of Muslim League, wrote about Jinnah is interesting. Who was our doughtiest opponent in 1906? A distinguished Muslim barrister in Bombay with a large and prosperous practice, Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He said that our principle of separate electorate was dividing the nation against itself, and for nearly a quarter of a century our most inflexible critic and opponent. Because Jinnah continued to be critical of this till 1920s. And being critical of separate electorate, which at one time even Congress agreed, means that Jinnah believed that Hindus and Muslims can live as one without any special safeguards for Muslims, and without fearing Hindu majoritarianism. Okay, so Jinnah and he was against the British rule. It means Jinnah thought that in a democracy, Hindus and Muslims could live together without fearing majoritarianism. And definitely that country would be secular country, not Islamic, nor a Hindu country. For example, he was opposed to joining Muslim League. He persuaded to sign its membership form in 1913. declaring his loyalty to the Muslim League and Muslim interest would in no way imply even the shadow of disloyalty to the larger national cause to which his life was dedicated. So joining Muslim League won't affect his loyalty to the national cause. So with reluctance he joined Muslim League in 1930. And he was the main architect of the pact between Congress and Muslim League in 1960. And Muslim League, in a Muslim League session in 1917, he said, if 70 million Muslims don't approve of a measure which is carried out by a ballot box, do you think it would be enforced and administered in this country? I say to my Muslim friends not to fear. This is a boji put by your enemies to scare you away from the cooperation with the Hindus. So he was saying that majoritarian fears were unjustified. Nothing will be passed against 70 million Muslims. Here, passed against some, which is passed against Muslims because there are 70 million of them in India. So, he didn't fear majoritarianism. So, he conceived of himself as Muslim Gokhale. And he was one important leader of Congress. And he thought he would be a leader of united, secular India. So that seemed to be the destiny he wanted. Okay. But his calculations were upset by none other than Gandhi. Jinnah could not fit with Gandhian methods. Okay. Because there are two things Jinnah didn't like in Gandhi. Number one, religious approach. And number two, his disobedience methods, civil disobedience methods or non-cooperation methods. Jinnah was familiar with constitutional methods. So Jinnah felt that Gandhian methods were very dangerous and they didn't have really long-term prospects. So Jinnah grossly underestimated Gandhi in this case. Freedom struggle was entering a different phase and Jinnah found himself outdated. Okay. So that is one. And second thing is, Jinnah couldn't feel one with Gandhi's religious approach. And particularly, Gandhi launched this Khilafat agitation. Jinnah rejected this pseudo-religious approach to politics. And Jinnah was right. Khilafat agitation brought reactionary Muslim elements to mainstream politics, and they joined on an Islamic issue, an issue that was outside India. And Gandhi naively thought Gandhi was emerging as a leader in India at that time, and that was his first movement. Only a few years ago he came from South Africa. So Gandhi didn't know that he was playing with fire. He thought that if Muslims take part in freedom struggle, and then they will continue to take part, and this contributes to Hindu-Muslim unity. But he was hopelessly wrong, and Jinnah was right. Okay. So it was during Gandhi's phase, Jinnah was out of mainstream leadership, that is leadership of the entire India. Till then Jinnah was a very important leader, and Jinnah was not a leader of Muslims like that, Muslims alone. He was a leader, he was an important Congress leader who was also a Muslim, because of which he had influence over Muslim League, and that is how he became ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. So an important Congress leader, a competent lawyer, and well educated, and because he happened to be Muslim, he could influence Muslim community, and that was how Jinnah's position was till Gandhian phase. In the next stage, Jinnah is not leader at an all India level of Hindus and Muslims, but rather he emerges as a representative of Muslims in India. So Jinnah, it was during late 20s, emerges as Muslims representative. Not trying to be a leader of all. And you can see Jinnah's role when he gave an alternative to Nehru Report. Nehru Report advocated a joint, it is Motilal Nehru Report, advocated a joint electorate without sufficient safeguards for Muslims. And in response to that, Jinnah proposed his famous 14 points, in which he included separate electorate and other safeguards, representation in legislatures and cabinet, and most Congress people were shocked and completely unacceptable to them. But when Jinnah was making these proposals, he was only thinking in terms of Muslim interests in a combined India. See, if you don't settle this question today, we shall have to settle it tomorrow. But in the meantime, our national interests are bound to suffer. So Jinnah was seeking safeguards, and in the second RTC he said, I am an Indian first and a Muslim afterwards, but at the same time I agree that no Indian can ever serve his country if he neglects the interests of the Muslims. Okay. Muslim interests cannot be neglected in India. Okay. And then from this he moved towards what is called two-nation theory. Two-nation theory is often misunderstood. In the sense that people were using at the time, and in the sense Jinnah used, nation refers to distinct people. Nation is not a country. Nation is not a state. So two-nation theory means Hindus and Muslims are distinct. Two-nation theory does not automatically mean two states. No. It can mean there are two nations. So without safeguards to minorities will suffer. That is the original version of two-nation theory. So Hindus and Muslims are two nations, but for them to live under one state, Muslims should have safeguards. And are Hindus and Muslims really two nations? If you ask, I think most people would say yes. Hindus and Muslims are two nations. Very little mixing took place. And this is what Ambedkar also argued. Okay. So let us see what Jinnah says. Hindus and Muslims belong to two different religious philosophies, social customs, literature. They neither intermarry nor dine together. Indeed, they belong to two different civilizations, which are based mainly on conflicting ideas and conceptions. They derive their inspiration from different sources of history. They have different epics, different heroes, and different episodes. Very often, the hero of one is a foe of the other. The victories and defeats overlap. This is so much true. Shivaji is a hero of Hindus, but a villain to Muslims. Ancient India is Hindu glory. Medieval India represents Muslims' glory. Okay. So, these are two nations. That was the point. But remember, two nations do not mean they have to have two different states. In 1940, Time and Tide, Jinnah writes, a plan of action must be evolved that recognizes that there are in India two nations, but both must share the governance of their common motherland In evolving such a constitution, the Muslims are ready to cooperate with the British government, the Congress, so that the present enmities may cease and India may take its place among the great countries of the world. So, these two nations should learn how to live under one government, how to live in one state. And there should be discussions. This was what Jinnah was proposing. Okay. And what kind of arrangements are needed so that Muslims will be protected and they won't face the majoritarianism of Hindus? And here we also need to think, assuming that Jinnah is thinking only about Muslims. Jinnah is thinking only about Muslims. But where are these Muslims? Muslims are there here. Out of total of 6.5 crores, 1/3 is here, 1/3 is here, and 1/3 is here. Okay. So we can't assume that if somebody is asking for separate rights of Muslims, he will naturally seek partition. It is not like that. 1/3 is here. What kind of partition is possible here? And 1/3 here, 1/3 here. So this can be separated and this can be separated. But how about this? So the issue is complicated. There are no easy solutions. So, what is needed is that two issues. Number one, separate safeguards. And also a different kind of devolution scheme. Where center is weak. So because this is India, this, okay. For these two parts to be under a closer control of Muslims, then the center should be weak. And Hindu provinces, of course, will be controlled by Hindus, like this. So not only separate safeguards like separate electorate or reservations and things like that, but center also should be weak. It means a different kind of federal arrangement is needed to assure enough of autonomy to Muslims. But the question is, why would Hindus agree to Jinnah's points? Safeguards plus weak center. Why would Hindus agree? They constitute 80% of the population. So why should they think in terms of safeguards to Muslims, and why should they choose weak center? So what I see is that if Hindus and Muslims are constitute two nations, as they do, and they are two nations, then partition is unavoidable, because Hindus won't like to lose power, and when Hindus won't like to lose power, and they don't want to give any separate safeguards to Muslims, then this would definitely result in majoritarianism. So Muslim fear of majoritarianism is true, and Hindus definitely won't want to give separate safeguards to Muslims to avoid majoritarianism. Why would they try to avoid majoritarianism when it gives them power? So because Hindu and Muslims are nations, so the better idea is two nations having two states. Okay, though it is not a solution to all the Muslims, but it at least minimizes the problem. So if you think like this, you will see that nobody is responsible for partition. No single person is responsible. There are really two nations, and that is logical. So it is wrong to say, I think, Jinnah created Pakistan. It was that Jinnah was an all India leader, and then he lost it. He began to represent Muslim interests, and then inevitably Hindu interests and Muslims were different, interests were different, and Hindus did not want to lose power, and so automatically partition took place. So in fact, Ambedkar thinks that Jinnah was swept by the power of idea of Pakistan. Jinnah was not the author of it. Jinnah himself was caught off guard. So Ambedkar's judgment seems to be right. So in that sense, Jinnah was not a great leader. Rather, he was following the pulse of the people. He was responding to the people despite himself. That is not what he wanted, but that is what people wanted. If Jinnah did not want partition, he would not have been a great leader. He became a great leader because what he was talking and what people wanted were the same, or he was talking what the people wanted. So Hindu-Muslim divisions and Pakistan as a solution is the underlying current. Jinnah was not responsible for it. Jinnah was responding to it. And I would say the same thing about Pakistan also. People debate in terms of what kind of Pakistan Jinnah wanted. Jinnah wanted. Okay. You know, it turned out to be Islamic. I think in this also, what mattered was not what Jinnah wanted, but what were the preferences of the people. The hold of religion was strong. Any call for Islam is popular. So, leaders who raise the slogan of Islam are popular, and because of which Pakistan changed. Okay, even if Jinnah wanted it to be otherwise. For example, Jinnah in his August 11, 1947 speech in the first session of the Pakistan Constituent Assembly, he said, "You may belong to any religion or a caste or a creed, that has nothing to do with the fundamental principle that we are citizens and equal citizens of one state. In course of time, Hindus would cease to be Hindus, Muslims would cease to be Muslims, not in the religion sense, because that is the personal faith of each individual, but in the political sense of the citizens of the state." So this is a very clear statement for secular Pakistan. And Jinnah appointed Jogendra Nath Mandal, an SC Hindu, as a first law minister, and Urdu poet Jagannath Azad to write national anthem. So, going by Jinnah before 20s and Jinnah after the formation of Pakistan, a speech like this, because this is not in a public meeting, it is in a Constituent Assembly. So Jinnah wanted a secular Pakistan, but then if he was insisting on secular Pakistan only, he won't get enough support from the people, because people wanted something else. And more importantly, there were others who would challenge such a secularism of Jinnah and try to make him unpopular. So Jinnah, in that sense, because of that, he was making all kinds of statements. So critics would say August 11, 1947 speech is not the only speech he made, and he made many speeches because of which there is an ambiguity in his ideas. For example, in a Muslim League session, Delhi 1943, he said the constitution of Pakistan can only be framed by the Milat and the people. The constitution and the government will be what the people will decide. The only question is that of minorities. So, minorities issue will be decided later. 1943. But he had to say all kinds of things, because he had to mobilize people, and it is easy to mobilize people in the name of religion. So even if he was interested only in secular rights of Muslims and his only fear was majoritarianism, he did not make it clear that he was for secular Pakistan. He didn't use the word secular, and his worry was only majoritarianism. But rather, he said many things as a way of mobilizing people for a Islamic state. And so, Pakistan state itself was created with a kind of an ideological ambiguity. And even if Jinnah was alive, and it would have helped, no doubt, but people's preference for religion and the hold that Islam has on Muslims would still more likely to make Pakistan more Islamic rather than secular. So I would say both Hindus in India and Muslims in Pakistan are subject to certain broader forces, and it is not any one or it is not just only it is not few people who were responsible for either majoritarianism here or Islamism there. Thank you.